Okay, so thanks you for everyone joining us today for our first BMS podcast. I am Mike Leather. Is my colleague Sam Musi Urira. He has been with the company now for you've been getting on for your third year, aren't you, with
Yeah,
BMS?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No,
For those that don't know us, BMS is a specialist sales recruitment consultancy, recruiting for sales vacancies at all levels across the UK. And yeah, I am delighted that you're joining me, Sam. Great to have you here.
Mike, a real pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I think the subject that we really wanted to kick this off with, which we felt was important, and we wanted to get ourselves in the shoes of the hiring managers that we work with, didn't we, Sam? We want to talk about three concerns that decision makers might have before starting the recruitment process. And this is very much based upon our experiences of working with our clients and working with hiring managers. And we hope that the audience and anyone that's listening to it gets some value from it, gets some actionable takeaways. First point then that we wanted to go through, and something I think you touched on with one of your clients recently, Sam, was how can I ensure that I'm recruiting the best person for the job?
100%. That's, I think, such a good point. Obviously, putting myself in, obviously, my client's shoes, naturally, that is, that anxiety in the sense, of how can I ensure that I'm identifying the right person and equally, recruiting the right person for this role, because, recruitment is such an important process and that's pivotal for organizations to get right, because of the positive impacts of getting it right, but equally on the other side, the negative impacts of what that could cost for employing the wrong person. I've got I feel like quite a relevant example because the time that we're in, I feel like the market at this time, there's an organization that I work with, a medical devices company, and yeah, they've been, recruiting for, a surgical/theatre experience rep.
Okay. Yeah.
And, really exciting position, territory manager role, within K. And within that, I think what became apparent for them and what's become apparent for them is, they've been looking for someone with, at least 3 years experience selling into that surgical sort of theatre space. And I feel like at this time we're in a market where, employers are starting to realize that maybe, someone who's got, 2 to 3 years experience within a certain field due to the impacts of the COVID pandemic. And if they actually haven't, no fault of their own, been in that hospital setting, been in theatres and haven't been exposed to that, that 3 years experience isn't what 2 to 3 years experience was prior to COVID, right?
Yeah,
So
100%. Yeah, people haven't
um,
been going out as much, have they?
exactly,
So
exactly.
it's different, isn't it? 3 years post-COVID experience in that market sector versus what it is now
Yeah,
is completely different, isn't it?
100%,
Yeah.
100%, right? So I think for them. It's been, maybe opening up that brief to consider, people that maybe have a clinical background, maybe someone who's an ODP, or a scrub nurse who doesn't have that sales experience, but understands how to conduct themselves within the theatre setting. Could be as simple as, where to stand. What products that I can touch, what products I can't touch, how to conduct myself, what conversations to have, and then probably investing a bit more on that sort of sales training piece, because again, that's something that the organization could look to do and invest that, to go above and beyond to help this person get up to speed. But yeah, we are currently in that time, and it's a very live example that I have, which is quite interesting in terms of where someone's experience is now compared to what it could have been, prior to COVID.
Yeah, I think it leans towards a point of, if I'm a hiring manager and I want to make sure that I'm recruiting the best person for the job,
Yeah,
having a really clear idea
yeah,
before I begin the process
yeah.
about the person that I want to bring in and thinking about what types of jobs they might have been doing previously that are going to be a good fit. Equally, how important, Sam, do you think it is that on this particular subject, companies are thinking about their ability to access the widest possible pool of talent?
100%. That's such a great point, Mike. And it boils down to, what's available to the company themselves by using their own methods, right? So that could be knowledge of people within the industry, but then
Yeah.
equally, it could be, the use of a recruiter or their own job advert, how much access do we have to identify this person? Are we putting ourselves in the best possible position to be successful? Because
Mm.
ultimately, it's all about finding the right person, which is, the point that we want to make is identifying the right person to do this job. So that's such a great point.
Yeah, and if we look at it as well, if we consider the talent pool as being active and passive,
Yeah,
again, if you're a hiring manager
yeah,
thinking about at the moment, how much reach do I have into the active marketplace?
yeah,
So active, what I mean by an active candidate for our listeners, people that are actually applying for jobs right now. So they're going on job boards, they're click and apply, and they're actively getting themselves out there.
yeah,
Passive candidates, conversely, are candidates that aren't doing that. They're not actively going out there applying for adverts, but they may be open to approaches for the based on the role. If it's the right type of job,
yeah,
they might decide, that they want to bring themselves onto the market. So you've got two different sides of the talent
yeah.
pool, haven't you, Sam, with that?
100%, 100%. You've summarized that really well.
How are the companies that you're working with, Sam, ensuring that they're accessing the entirety of the talent pool?
Yeah, I think it's about, look, each approach is different, and each role is unique in its own speciality,
Yeah,
and how specific that actual brief might be, right? But I think the company that I am working with that are doing well are putting themselves in that position to be successful, and really are partnering up, with BMS, Perform, or any recruiter that they may be using at that time to, it's important when they understand that we've only got access to, by using our adverts, we're relying on those active, engaged people that are, potentially looking for a role. The not active market, as you've called it.
yeah.
It's all about putting themselves in that position. So the companies that I'm working with, and the ones that I've done really well with, value those partnerships and value the recruiters going above and beyond, to really help them identify, the talent by, being more proactive, not just relying on just, the ad response and stuff coming in, but having to, go out and, hunt and identify the right people for their roles.
That's it. Proactive is a key word that
Correct.
you've used. Being
Yeah.
proactive in their search for candidates. What other tips are you giving to your clients at the moment on in this respect, and how
Yeah.
they can, make sure that they're recruiting the best person for the job?
Yeah, well, I think it starts right at the top, right? In terms of the meetings that they have internally coming to market, knowing firstly, are we at the right place to be competitive in the market? Are we, and that boils down to the finance, right? Are we paying the right amount of money
Yeah,
to
yeah,
attract the right level of candidate? Are we competitive when you go to the market? Second thing is, do we have a plan?
yeah,
In terms of that interview plan, do we have interview dates and plan in process? How quickly can we do this? And also, do we have a clear agenda in terms of, do we understand who we want to bring into the organization? Right? Do
yeah.
we fully understand what that person looks like, the soft skills that they have, and yeah, understand the kind of profile that we want to bring in. So, by having all this in place before actually recruiting, that's the trust that I'm, giving my clients, and the ones that are taking that on are doing really well.
Yeah, I think one of the key points to this, I agree with everything you said, Sam, there. The key
Yeah,
points to this, just to finish off on this particular point, is that set interview and assessment process, because we've talked
yeah,
here about making sure they're accessing the widest selection of talent
yeah,
that they can.
yeah,
They've got a clear idea of what they'll recruit, which is all great.
yeah,
But in order to make sure you're recruiting the best person for the job, in my view, the interview process, it's got to be engaging, it's
yeah,
got to be robust, but it's got to give the candidate an opportunity to demonstrate their capability, but also coachability as
exactly,
well.
exactly.
Because we've spoken here about um, looking outside of the box, perhaps, and
Yeah,
considering people from different backgrounds.
yeah,
Because what you might have thought a specific of someone was doing in a specific role previously 3 years ago isn't what they might be doing now. So then,
yeah,
if we're bringing people in from a different background or a different sales background, different experience, and we've got to make sure we've got that interview process and that
yeah.
assessment absolutely spot on. So I think if hiring managers are doing all of these points, then they've got a much better chance of recruiting the best person for their sales jobs.
Spot on. Excellent, Mike. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what was the second point, Sam, that you've got there that we wanted to chat through?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think second point is, company perception. And by that I mean, how are we being perceived, by candidates, and equally, most importantly, how are we being perceived by the candidates that we want to recruit?
Mm.
How do we stand out within the marketplace, and what people think of us?
What's the drawback on that then? If we think about companies that that we work with or we have worked with in the past who might not have been that acutely aware of how they're perceived
Yeah,
in the talent pool, what have you seen as some of the negative impacts of that?
that's a really, really good point, right? And I think, we live in a society now where, word of mouth, reviews, all these things, go a long way with regards to decision making,
Mm.
and just to where companies are sort of fallen down is, when they're not being aware of how they're seen within the market, when they're not being aware of, the reviews that they're getting, the good, bad, the ugly ones equally, right? And
Yeah.
it's just that all plays a part in terms of when we're speaking to candidates and whether they want to work with this organization and they can really see a future there. So, that awareness is so critical, to make sure that the organization, fits, what these candidates' perception is, and that's what it's all about, making sure that everything is aligned to, a successful recruitment process.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd really encourage, and I do
yeah,
encourage clients that we work with to sort of
yeah,
take themselves on a candidate journey as
yeah,
if they were applying for a role with their company. Because if I'm a candidate right now and I was on the market, I'd be looking at the LinkedIn page.
yeah,
I'd be looking, what are the good news stories?
yeah,
What are the testimonials? How long have people been there for?
yeah,
Yeah, I might go and look at some websites online,
yeah.
Glassdoor, some
Glassdoor,
review
yeah,
center. Yeah, obviously there's a
yeah,
caveat with that.
yeah,
People tend to put reviews on when they're
yeah,
unhappy, not
yeah,
always when they
yeah,
are happy. So
yeah,
look at that on balance. But I think as an employer, when you're thinking of your employer value proposition, it's something that you need to be aware of, and then making sure that you presented well online on socials, because candidates
yeah,
can find out so much more now
yeah,
about you before they've even interviewed with you than they ever could before. I'm thinking, as well on this point, how important is it that companies are aware of what salespeople from their competitors might think of?
yeah, 100%. So no, that's such a good point, Mike. In terms of we are in a time now that just by click of a button, you can find out all, the good, the bad, the important things that an organization is doing. So yeah, it's, if we're looking to, potentially attract someone potentially from a competitor, we see it's important for all these things to, to be really good. So putting the company definitely needs to put their hat on in terms of being a candidate on that journey, finding
Mm.
out what we're thought of within the market. So yeah, really, really important.
Yeah, because if I'm working for said company and I've
Yeah,
been selling against other said company for the
yeah.
last
For
three to
three,
four
4 years, yeah,
years, and I've spent my working days explaining why you
the,
should buy
yeah,
from me versus them,
yeah,
then how likely am I then to want to maybe
yeah.
work
Work it.
for this company? So if I'm
Yeah,
that company that's looking to attract that candidate, it's really important that everything online about me is all singing, all dancing, and as clean as it
exactly,
can be to attract that type of person as well. And
exactly.
another tip on this, and something that is really good practice to do, is surveying your current staff as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
Ask
And
them on when they were going through the recruitment process,
what was
what was
yeah,
their perception?
yeah,
How
and
did they perceive you as an employer when they were coming through it? What advice would they give you that could help you attract candidates via your employer brand?
exactly. Those surveys could be anonymous as well, right?
Yeah.
So no, it's such a good point. Really putting themselves in that candidate journey and understanding what it is that's drawn them to their company as well. So yeah, really good point, Mike.
So the final point that we wanted to chat through, and it's arguably like the most important one, because
Yeah,
when a company partners with a recruiter,
yeah,
like BMS or someone else, they're looking to do that because they want to fill the vacancy as quickly as they can. Because if they've got a vacancy, ordinarily it's costing them money
That's
because
right.
it's a
Yeah.
territory that isn't being covered. There's a financial impact to that. There's also a business impact on it. Are other people needing to cover that area? There's the pressures that then puts on the rest of the sales team and
Yeah.
the manager. So the final point we wanted to talk about is how can I ensure that my time to hire is as short as possible
Yeah.
to enable us to recruit the best sales talent? How can people do this, Sam?
Really, really good point, Mike. In terms of when we think of that time to hire piece, what is actually involved in that, right? So I think the first thing that's involved is the interview. So
Yeah,
having interview, dates provisionally mapped out, having a real plan in terms of this is how we want the interview process to run, having this mapped out, making sure that we stick to this process, and also we're able to be flexible in some instances to potentially move it forward. Another thing which is
let's just
really,
sit on that
yeah,
point
yeah,
1 second, Sam, just to cut in because we want to make sure the audience is getting as much
yeah,
value as possible. So when we're talking about mapping out the interview process,
yeah,
just give a real sort of clear and concise
yeah,
answer. So what does
yeah.
that actually mean? Like when we're advising our clients, what are we saying? What is a mapped out interview process?
Yeah, so a mapped out interview process when we're advising our clients is literally having plans in terms of this is when we're looking to conduct our first stage interview, having this arranged. This is
Yeah,
when we're looking to arrange our second stage interview or final interview, and having a process confirming, the feedback as well, right?
yeah,
How times, dates booked in, how quickly and efficiently we can get this feedback back to our clients.
yeah.
So, from an interview process, it's that, and having this, in the diary and sticking to it is, probably very, very important.
Yeah, and,
Yeah,
and, I- and I guess as well, right, we're very much in a
yeah,
candidate-driven market.
yeah,
Ordinarily, we're working with a handful of candidates for a job at best
yeah,
because it's difficult to find good people.
yeah,
So having a mapped out interview process generally means that you're mitigating the risk of losing people
yeah,
because as a recruitment partner, we can say to the candidate, the first interview date is going to be on this date.
yeah,
If you're successful, the seconds are going to be on that date. It just means a smoother process for
yeah,
both candidate and client. As we say, usually means that we don't miss out on people. I
yeah,
just want to pipe up with a point on this one.
yeah.
Something like a bit of a bugbear for me, but when companies closing dates for applications on job adverts
I know,
and they
I know.
don't review CVs at all
Yeah,
until this
yeah,
closing date has passed.
yeah.
It's a bugbear of mine. What do you
I
think
know.
about that?
That's such a good point, right, Mike? And if you think about it, like you've obviously mentioned, the mitigations and the challenges that we
Yeah,
have at this time with the market being candidate led, right? And it's when you've got, a date and you're not reviewing these CVs, by the time you review the CVs in 2 to 3 weeks, the candidate's gone anyway, right? So
yeah. We're just in
it's
this merry-go-round, just
yeah,
going
and
round
you're
and
just
round and
going
round.
round and round, and you're
Yeah,
you're paying more to keep the adverts running, and that is, yeah, you couldn't have said it any better. It is such a big bugbear for myself too.
yeah. 100%. On the same topic
Yeah,
as the first point, really, with the interview process being provisionally mapped out, but
yeah,
making sure that we're giving feedback
yeah,
quickly and it's reasonable feedback as well.
yeah,
It's effective feedback. It's
yeah,
not just you're a yes or you're a
yeah,
no. That
yeah.
can really help drive down time to hires, can't it?
100%, 100%. And like feedback is so, so crucial. And obviously, when I speak to candidates, it says a lot about an organization too, in terms of, as part of their interview process, when they're able to give effective, critical feedback, which is, detailed what that candidate's done well, what they haven't, what they could do better in that quick amount of time. We're all about it increases that engagement as well. And
Yeah,
that candidate's thinking, this is a place that I want to be working because look at how
100%.
well that feedback's gone. Look at how quickly I've received it. I've not been waiting around, a week, 2 weeks to know where I stand. And that's all part of the journey. And in this market, it's all about marginal gains. And the more that we could have processes like this in place, it increases the chances of success. So yeah,
Yeah, super point. Yeah,
yeah,
because selling to candidates, making them feel wanted, making them feel loved. But
yeah,
guess what? It's going to drive down your time to hire
yeah,
because it's a candidate-driven market. If they have an offer from you
yeah,
and they have an offer, or they're waiting on an offer from someone else, or
Yeah.
they've got a final interview date with someone else, if they feel really wanted by you,
Yeah.
there's less chance they're going to hang around and
Fair
wait
point.
for those other opportunities, because they think, wow, that process has been
Yeah.
really efficient,
Yeah.
really quick. The
Yeah.
feedback's been fluid.
Yeah.
It's been good feedback.
Yeah.
They've been quick to get me through it. These look like they're a company that have got everything in order. And I wanna get on board with them.
Spot on.
So it's not always something that I think clients and hiring managers think about,
Yeah.
how the speed of the feedback
Yeah.
impacts upon
Yeah.
the times to hire, but it
Yeah.
definitely does. The other final point on this as well, again, it's relation to process, but it's also time to hire.
Yeah.
But what about getting offers and contracts out, right, and the
Yeah.
process that's involved with that?
Again, it's such a good point, and this is all part of it. It's important for hiring managers and organizations to know that just because the recruitment doesn't end there. It's
Yeah,
very much getting the offer, getting the contract, their onboarding. It's all part of it, but that is so important from a candidate point of view, but also from a recruitment point of view, just to make sure that that process is done as smoothly as possible. In this market, waiting around for offers, for contracts, all these things, they all make parts of the decision from the candidate point of view, whether they're going to decide to go ahead with joining the organization. So the quicker that this can be aligned, the smoother the process is. It all definitely plays a massive part. So yeah,
hundred percent.
this is that's absolutely critical.
Couldn't agree more. Well, that brings us to the end of end of our podcast, Sam. So thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah,
It's
cheers,
great.
Mike.
Yeah,
Thank
hope
you, thank you so
to
much for having me.
yeah, it's all good. Hope to have you back on again soon. So the next week's guest will be Laura Tucker, who is also part of our medical team. She's been with BMS for 20 years, so she'll have lots of wisdom to share. And the subject on that one will be the benefits of considering sales talent from outside of your industry sector. So I look forward to discussing that. And once again, Sam, thanks for joining me.
Cheers, Mike. Thank you.